So now we're going to talk about some updates, particularly around the Nutanix side. And we're always going to start off with the fun stuff first, as we're going to talk about licensing. Since we're talking about EUC, I think it's key to point out that when you look at the major platform vendors, Nutanix is the only one out there that still is committed to EUC from the ground up. You know, not just with the technology, but also licensing it specifically for your EUC environment. So, you know, vSphere for desktops, the VMware customers was always a big thing to get those enterprise features for VDI without having to pay for it like traditional data center virtualization. That's gone. If you still have your perpetual and you're on there, you know, you have it for a little while, but come that next renewal, it's gone. Zen Server is changing its licensing. They kind of have given a transition so that there's a promo through the end of the year. But once you get past that, you're going to be paying for Zen Server for your EUC environment. So with Nutanix, you license it for your EUC environment. You license it by user. So then in that cluster, you can pack that thing full of CPU, memory, storage, all that you want, because you're paying it for it based off of the user. And it's the same exact software levels as you would if you were buying it for a traditional server virtualization. So whatever the NCI Pro has, VDI Pro is going to have. And the nice piece of it too is that files is included. So technically they call it unified storage because it could be objects, it could be files, it could be volumes. But traditionally what we're seeing is end user computing environments are going to leverage Nutanix files because it's a great way to keep those profiles local, keep that end user data local. And so you have that included. So in addition to having just the core platform that the VDIs are going to run on, you have that user storage to run with it on top of that. We've got some updates to software. So license enforcement. So before you used to have that nag screen at the top where it would say, you know, hey, you're not in compliance. And you could just kind of say, yeah, I get it. I know that. That's not going to be the case anymore. So if you're on the short-term release cycle where you're getting all those new features and taking advantage of that, that license enforcement is out there now. And then for the next long-term service release, which we're expecting that to come out sometime in the summer, is what we're hearing. License enforcement is going to come out for that. So we were supposed to have a long-term service release, you know, now pretty much. We're expecting it to drop anytime. So the 6.8 line of AOS, it's not going to be an LTS. It's going to be more like an extended short-term release cycle. So there's some changes that are happening with software code. So based off of that, it's going to be, hey, it's going to be short term, but it's going to be a little bit longer than what we currently have with our short term, where you're having to stay on that current release and do those upgrades at a much quicker pace. So as we're preparing to get some of these updates for whether it's you're going to be on the short-term cycle or you're going to go to the next LTS, if you are leveraging Citrix in the environment, that AHV plugin that goes along with it, that needs to be updated. So it's really not a major upgrade to add that onto your Citrix infrastructure. But from a compatibility perspective, you absolutely want to take care of that. Go ahead and take care of that now so that you don't have to worry about that. Get into the spot where you upgrade it now. Hey, my machines won't spin up. They won't spin down. I can't provision new machines. Just go ahead and take care of it now. It'll work as it is now, and then you set yourself up for the future. And then as we talk about, you know, just Nutanix commitment to end user computing, you know, we talked about how we're always looking at, you know, what other things are out there on the market to whether it's to fit a particular use case, or as Citrix has shifted some of their focus to more enterprise and there's not things as readily available for the small, medium business. Nutanix is looking across the market as well. So they have a ton of information out there, whether it's just general, hey, I want to do Windows 11 on AHV. What are the best practices? What are the things that I need to know about? If you're potentially looking at parallel RAS as a replacement for Citrix, Nutanix has already built out that reference architecture for it. They're testing it. They're working with the Parallels team. Or you're saying, hey, I'm going to extend my environment out to Azure, to AWS, and I want to know, does this look differently if I put a Nutanix cluster in AWS and Azure? And then kind of the coup de grace is the Nutanix validated design. So this is where soup to nuts, software, hardware versions, the whole thing, they plan it out. And, if you want to be able to say, go to Nutanix, go to Citrix, say, I want to ensure this, give me everything that I'm going to need for that. That's what a Nutanix validated design is. So they've got those out there for EUC based workloads. So if you're a Nutanix customer, make best use of that, whether it's updating things for Windows 11 and what do I need to be prepared for that. FS Logics, how does that work on Nutanix? A ton of great information. There's probably close to 50 articles. I just threw 5 out there that kind of give you that breadth of information as far as what all different things from an EUC perspective Nutanix is looking at, making sure that it provides you the optimal experience for. So Windows 11. So the poll showed that this is the year for Windows 11. So what do we need to prepare for our Nutanix environments to support Windows 11? So the big thing with Windows 11 is TPM. And then specifically for VDI workloads, being able to support VTPM. So if you're running AHV and want to throw Windows 11 on top of that, we need to make sure that we're on Prism Central 2022.9, that if we're on the long-term service release, that we're at least .6.5.1, and that we upgrade those VirtIO drivers. We're starting to use those 1.2.1. I know a lot of times I see customers don't seem to keep the VirtIO quite as up to date because it still just works, but we definitely need to make sure that we're availing ourselves of those updated drivers, particularly for Windows 11. The fun part with Windows 11 right now with Nutanix is being able to back it up or do a DR solution where, hey, I want to have this at multiple data centers. Because right now, the support for that are a little bit on different tracks. So if we want to be able to replicate that image to a different data center, then we need to be on Prism Central 2023.3. And if you're a current Nutanix customer and you get the field advisories and support update articles, you'll probably have seen there have been some issues around stability, particularly if there's additional features. So that certainly is a challenge. And there's also a major infrastructure, not an architecture change as you go from some of the older versions of Prism Central to 2023 line of Prism Central. So we run into that. So if you have challenges with that, don't hesitate to reach out. But that certainly has been a challenge for, I want to be able to, if I've got a metro data center and I want to make sure I get this on both sides. Right now, you're going to have to kind of push the limits and maybe push forward on that Prism Central and handle that. You also need to be right now, the short-term cycle is the only one that supports that as well. So, depending on what your risk posture is and kind of what your deployment is, it's a little bit in flux right now. So obviously, as the new updates come out with the next LTS, hoping to see all of those things get aligned. But the nice thing is if you do that backup DR, you can recover that out to an NC2 instance. So it's not just hey, I want to be able to do, get that image from one data center to the other. If public cloud is part of where you're looking to go, and you're going to put a Nutanix cluster, say, out in Azure to take advantage of some of that for a DR perspective, then we can absolutely replicate that out into an Azure instance. And that's really where we're seeing a lot of investigation and customers coming to us and asking questions is around NC2 and what that opens up for them. So with files, now there's multi-Prism Central Smart DR. So Smart DR allows us to, rather than replicating the entire file server and doing an entire failover of everything, we can replicate just at a share level. So now, rather than saying, hey, I have to have everything under one management umbrella, if everything's on-prem and something is out in NC2 and Azure, now I've got 2 different Prism Centrals. How do I replicate that? We can take care of that. And Nutanix Files is supported out on NC2 and Azure as of the 4.3 release. So now you kind of have that ability to take everything that you're doing in your on-prem data center and your private cloud and then be able to do that out into Azure. And we're seeing a lot of people who are looking at that because it provides a number of advantages. One, it's the same software that you're used to using. So you don't have to change up any of those management procedures, those build processes, support processes. They all, they're all the same because foundationally it's the same software. It's just a difference of whether it's running on some hardware that you own or some hardware that AWS or Azure owns. It gives you some flexibility from instance sizes. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a conversation with a customer and they're like, well, I need something where it's like 2 vCPUs, but I need 10 gigs of memory. Well, we got to jump up to the next instance size to get that 10 gigs of memory or more. And so that increases CPU usage. And so you can't quite tune it just the way that you want to. So since this is just a Nutanix cluster, you can build out those VDI sizes, those server sizes to whatever spec works for you and what you've tested off of in your environment without having to worry about does Microsoft or does AWS have something that fits that. And that allows you to worry less about that and worry about how do I get that application, that workload out into public cloud. Again, it's AHV to AHV, so we just migrate it from one to the other. And we don't have to worry about refactoring applications, figuring out, hey, does the database follow? How does the database follow? All that good stuff. And I know, when we talk about public cloud, it sounds a little odd to say that it's cost effective to put a piece of software on top of a bare metal instance that somebody else is hosting. But because of the fact that, we talk about we can get away from worrying about those instance sizes, we can tune that a little bit better. Then it gives us that flexibility. We can potentially be more dense and targeted in what our workloads are. So prime example that I had with a customer is that, we were looking at about 180 VDIs and doing just native Azure. It was going to cost them around $350,000. And that was, that was an annual, or sorry, that was for a 3-year commitment. So they were buying in at the beginning, and they were committed to that for 3 years. So another customer was looking at NC2 and Azure, and they're going to be able to get just as many, if not more, workloads on that same for about $30,000 to $40,000 less, because again, they can tune some of those instance sizes where, based off the sizing for the other customer, they had to bump up on quite a number of their instance sizes to meet what that workload was. So, it sounds a little counterintuitive at first to say, hey, I'm going to load something else into the public cloud before I start putting my workloads on top of that. But it really gives you that flexibility, and that flexibility can really pay off for you. And then particularly for a DR solution, it really gives you that flexibility. So in a traditional DR, if we're talking about 2 data centers and I've got, 20 hosts in one data center, well, then to be able to plan for that DR, I need my 20 hosts in my secondary data center as well. With doing it in public cloud, we can say, okay, I've got my 20 hosts that are on-prem, but for Nutanix, I just need 3 nodes to start off with. And if I can support, say, the storage capabilities for that, then I may be able to do it with just 3 nodes to start off with. Or maybe I need to support the storage replication needs. I need 10 nodes. But rather than doing a full-on like for like, I can be more cost effective, get it out there. And then if I need to grow that, say I do need to do a full DR and I need additional compute, but the storage is already there, well, then I can add in some nodes to that cluster and I can spin that up rather than paying for those additional 10 nodes. I may only need to pay for the first 10 to make sure everything is out there. And then when I call my DR, when I fail everything over, then I add in those other 10 nodes for the period of time that I need them. And then we can pull those back when we're done. Once we fail back and we're in our primary data centers, we can start pulling those back. The other nice thing too is, when you talk about not having to worry about the hardware, you have the ability to be able to mix and match nodes, particularly they announced it on the AWS side. And I don't know that it's on the Azure side, but I would expect it to be soon. But you can mix and match those bare metal instance types within the cluster. So if I need, or I just want to take advantage of newer processors, faster storage, or additional capabilities that the hyperscalers come out with, then I'm going to add in that new node. expand my cluster, I can drop off the other one, and I can just stair step it so that you can really increase your performance. Or if you're doing, a production workload as well, add in that additional node, take advantage of it, drop out one of the older nodes, and just stair step that to be able to get those additional resources, take advantage of NC2 is going to self heal itself, but now too from a how do I make sure that I'm getting the best performance ongoing? So when Azure comes out with additional features and functionalities, you're ready to take advantage of those right away. So if you want to try that stuff out, Nutanix has Test Drive where you can log in and it's a simulated environment. So whether it's NC2, whether it's Nutanix Cloud Manager, Nutanix Files, you can do all of that in kind of a simulated fashion. There are trials that we can do for NC2 in Azure and NC2 in AWS. Reach out to us. We've done quite a bit of this. We've got an NC2 in AWS that we hibernate that allows us to spin that up, spin that down for demos and for testing purposes. So happy to jump on a call with you and talk through it further. We also have a bunch of jump starts. So if you say, hey, I just need a little help getting this piece of the environment moving forward, we'll help you out. We'll get you started. It's not going to be, a full soup to nuts type of a deployment, but we'll help you move that along. So whether it's, Nutanix Files, NC2 and Azure AWS, we're seeing a lot of people, right now who are saying, hey, what do I need to do those first steps to migrate my vSphere environment over to Nutanix AHV because I don't want to pay that bill. So we'll help you out with that and get you started on your way. And then if you want us to take it even further and help you out and move that along so you don't have to pay that VMware bill, happy to stay on with you and get the whole thing moving for you.